Economics of the 13 colonies. Important terms. Cottage industry, a small scale industry that is operated by family members using their own equipment. Examples include shoemaking, basket weaving, sewing, clothes, pottery, etc. Depiction of a man making shoes. Subsistence farming, when enough crops are grown to feed a family and not for the purpose of making money. Cash crops, a crop that is grown and sold for money. Columbian Exchange, named after Christopher Columbus, the Columbian Exchange transported animals, crops, diseases, flowers, plants, and technology from the Americas, North America and South America to Europe. The Americas to Europe, food, corn, tomatoes, potatoes, peanuts, pumpkins. Crops, tobacco, cotton. Europe to the Americas, animals, cattle, pigs, horses, foods, coffee beans, onions, grapes, and bananas. Disease, malaria, and diphtheria. Columbian Exchange, impact of the Columbian Exchange. New foods improved the diet and lifespan of Europeans. European economies strengthened. Horses changed the way Native Americans lived. Unfortunately, though, disease ravaged the Native American populations. The natives had little to no immunity for diseases brought over by the Europeans. Historians establish between 50% and 90% of the Native Americans died from diseases. Industry by the region. New England colonies. Abundant forests meant that this region produced a lot of lumber. Some of the lumber would then be used to support New England's thriving shipbuilding industry. Those ships then supported a robust fishing industry in the region. Also, as forest, which would allow for more cash crops to be grown in New England. Industry by region, the middle colonies. With a milder climate than the New England colonies, which allowed for a longer growing season, farming was more integral to the economics of the middle colonies. Cash crops that were grown were wheat and other grains and led to a thriving grist mill industry. While farming was the middle colony's most significant industry, large forests also meant that this would be a textile mills. The southern colonies, with less natural resources like forests and mountains than the other colonies. The southern colonies had ample land with fertile soil and an excellent climate for growing crops. This meant that the southern colonies were almost entirely reliant on cash crops for their economic and because of this, plantations were common. A plantation was a large farm with hundreds of thousands of acres, the house of the plantation owner, and several buildings for those that lived and worked on the plantation. This depicts a picture of the plantations. The most common use was with indigo, rice, and tobacco. Transatlantic triangular trade, called the triangular trade because it was three sided and resembled a triangle. From Europe to Africa, rum, textile, and manufactured goods. From Africa to Americas, slaves. From the Americas to Europe, raw materials like cotton, sugar, and tobacco. Slavery. Definition of a slave: someone who is the property of someone else, their master, and forced to obey them. The transatlantic triangular trade brought millions of enslaved Africans to the Americas. Enslaved is to force someone into slavery. Slavery. Many enslaved Africans ended up in the colonies while others were sent to the Caribbean islands, Central America, or South America. Conditions on the ships which brought enslaved people to the Americas was horrible. Ships were cramped with very little space. Food was scarce. Slavery. Many of the enslaved people did not survive the journey across the Atlantic, and according to some estimates, one out of every four died during the voyage. Upon arrival in the Americas, they would then be sold at an auction. Painting of a slave auction occurred in the year 1655. Slaves lived in every colony. However, many ended up in the southern and middle colonies. This is due in large part for two main reasons. The middle and the southern colonies depend heavily on agriculture, which required a lot of human labor. Many of the New England colonies felt that slavery was against their religion. This is a photo analysis. Describe what all are being depicted. Please make sure you listen to the recording before you attempt to answer the questions as well as fill in your guided notes.